learning that I could be confident without all of that. But I needed to take that first step because as much as I used the privilege, kind of like you said, of being short, I was able to do that.
This is a very special episode, Josh, because this is number 19 for me. Episode
right,
19.
wow.
Yeah, I know. I started this actually right when I moved here to San Antonio, and I've been working through all the people who I know won't say no, and then slowly have extended my way out to include the next circle of people, such as yourself. I interviewed Jason, and I have got some other people on the books as well, folks who we've only met each other recently, and out of just our initial relationship, there was something about your story that said to me, man, I think that I would love to hear what you have to say on this subject and how it applies to your life. So I just want to say again, a lot of work has come to this point, and I am so grateful that you're willing to invest your time into this project.
I gladly. I just hope I don't have. I believe you called it domain dependence, where it's in only in one situation and not all the aspects of my life. So we'll see.
Okay.
When you say interesting, we'll see.
We'll see where it goes, and also given the time constraint and everything else, I won't waste much time mincing words. We'll just talk until the conversation's over, and if that's 15 minutes or 45, whatever it happens to be, we'll go from there. And if you ever need to step away to take care of business, just let me know, and we'll pick things up later. Okay?
I think we should be okay. The trick of knowing is that he never likes to take a nap. So that's how I told my the people closest to me. I said I know he's sick because he's already asleep at 9:30 in the morning, whatever it may be. So
yeah,
it should be good for a bit.
How old is your kid?
8. He's turning 9 in May.
Man, yeah, that's how you definitely know that they're sick. Anytime the kids who don't nap anymore start sleeping in the day, it's like, yep, you're out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The second indicator was him running out of my room at top speed because I let him nap there and vomiting all over the floor before he got to the toilet. So small indicators there.
Yeah, just a small indicator.
Yes. Excuse me.
What you're saying, that your kid doesn't just vomit every day regularly for you? That's not normal?
Vomit, yeah.
Yeah.
Just shoot it across the room. Sometimes you just gotta purge the demons, man.
My college days knew that too well, but I'm grateful to say that I will not have any demon. I have not purged demons in quite some time. Yes.
I know that's not part of your repertoire there. No exorcisms.
No. At least not self-exorcisms.
Yeah. There you go.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm proud to say that I have nothing to exercise. Excise. Whatever.
That sounds super right. Yeah. That sounded.
Excise.
Yeah.
Exorcism. Exercise. Yeah. It's exorcise with an O.
Exorcise. Okay.
Which is
not to be confused with your 10K exercise.
Exercise, yeah, man. Yeah. And speaking of exercise, the first thing that I thought was super interesting to hear about is to talk about your story relationship with Tai Chi. How did you come to find it, and what has Tai Chi done for you?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned how would you find it. How did I find it? Because I'll say I probably found it a lot differently and in a much sillier way than most people do. It is just like TV shows and movies, where the majority of people who practice it are, a billion years old. And not to insult them at all, because very much opposite to the TVs and movies. It can be very difficult, and it's a very, I would say, challenging thing to even think about. And maybe not think about, but I guess put into practice. But so in terms of my personal journey, I guess it really started back when, because I used to be a big fitness buff, but it was always the gym. You know, I got bought into that fantasizing of, you know, Generation Iron and getting bigger, and I was always the small guy, so it was really cool to be able to get really strong and get a lot bigger. And while I was still the short guy, I wasn't really the small guy anymore. Um,
Yeah, I get what you mean.
I was about to say, I don't think you're on the short side. You're on the average side, right? Average size side?
It's I have to say that I became part of a friend group where in middle school we were all about the similar height, and then all of my friends hit a growth spurt. And if you look at photos, I actually just spent time with them just recently on a bachelor party, and you look at a photo, and everyone is at least one head taller than me. And so, yeah, you're right. Like in the grand
I
population
get
of
you.
things, I might be average, but in my immediate sphere of influence, most of my family is 6 foot. Most of the men are 6 foot, and all of my friends are over 6 feet tall.
So what you're saying is you have a different perspective than them.
Yes, and I also say that Josh, you and I live the sweet life of the privilege of our statue, which is we can fly coach and it doesn't suck.
Oh my gosh, yes, you're so right. I hadn't
Those
thought about that in a
those
while.
long-legged freaks. So you're saying that when you were younger, there was just part of you building your self confidence and understanding like who you are in relationship to others was helped out with the pursuing physical fitness and achieving a certain body physique that allowed you to feel good about yourself and overcome some internal insecurities that otherwise would have been there without the aid of physical fitness.
I would say so, yes.
Mm.
It definitely helped be the first step in building my confidence. Um, until ironically, I got older and learned I don't necessarily, you know, want to jump ahead and skip stuff. Sorry, I'm not going so consequentially or timeline oriented. I'm kind of jumping around, but I just wanted to say, you know,
Jump, man,
ironically, I
jump.
learned I learned that I didn't need that muscle, you know, that kind of stuff to be confident. Um, if I was fit in other ways or other such things, or just, you know, growing up type of a deal. Um, Learning that I could be confident without all of that. But I needed to take that first step um, because as much as I used the privilege, kind of like you said, of being short, and I was able to do that. Sometimes it just got old. That seemed to be the main subject when talking to me. It was always brought up, and growing up with that all the time, all I'm hearing all the time, it got tiring. Um, so that was my first step. Was weightlifting. I started about sophomore year in high school. Um, so some saying that's a little too early to weightlift, and maybe I agree. But you know, I fell in love with it, and I really would spend hours in the gym. Um, and it being, I would say, you know, something you could look at as almost a skill. I was pretty good at it, and pretty good at kind of pushing past my limits, um, which it ended up being a detriment to a certain extent. Um,
How so?
well, it just, I think it was the precursor to some of my injuries, which the Marine Corps exacerbated, which I wanted to jump into next. Part of that, you know, mental space where I was at of not wanting to be seen as just the tiny guy. It started with weightlifting, and then that kind of same thought process had me join the Marine Corps because the Marines are the toughest. The Marines are the biggest and the baddest, and yada yada yada. Um, so I did that, and quickly learned. I tell the story all the time, and maybe I won't go into detail, but just that, you know, about 3 days in, I made it that far until I realized maybe this wasn't the choice for me. You know, I just didn't necessarily fit in with the thought processes that they had specifically, or the lifestyle, I guess. But suffice to say, I still did okay there. I still did well there. Rose through the ranks, worked hard. That was a time where the gym helped me a lot, because despite me mentioning that, it caused, it helped to exacerbate some injuries I got. It did relieve a lot of stress during that time, which I had a lot of stress, continuously mounting stress throughout those 5 years of my life. So being physically fit definitely deterred that, and making that a big part of my life helped.
Man, I just want to step in and reflect on what you're offering. Josh, it's this interesting thing of like how the gym was kind of like your church in a way. Like going there was where you were able to find peace and reflection and meaning, community as well, a refuge for handling the stresses in life. Like in a way, one thing that like religions can provide, even though they don't do the best of it today, is a sense of like constancy, a consistency, where like no matter where you go, you can always come back to the temple and like start there and like go back and do your 7 days and like go back, and it kind of adds some like rhythm. And the gym provides that, I think, in a really, really same way. Same equipment, same time, same routine. No matter what's happening outside the gym walls, you can at least go back to your reps and back to your lifting.
Yeah, I think that's a great comparison.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the hard part about what you're sharing though, Josh, is that it was like this double-edged sword, because I mean, you're looking back in time and reflecting on it, but when you're in the moment, were you starting to see cracks in the system with the gym and with physical fitness at the time?
No, because even if it was hard to tell at all. Partially because I think mentally I didn't want to recognize. Like you said, it was kind of like my church, and because it was such a big helper and stress reliever and a big part of my life, I didn't even want to. I don't think I could fathom that it was causing some issues physically.
Mm-hmm. And
Wow.
are you saying that it was because of your over exercising that the issues were coming?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, so it's not that it was like exercise itself was the issue; it was the overuse of exercise.
Definitely. Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, I get that. I think that everything, to a point, I mean, you can drown. Water can become toxic if you drink too much of it, which is wild to think about.
But no, yes, exactly.
Right? And so the same things that are so good for us, I mean, again, even religion. I mean, you see the extremists out there, and like you see what it does when you when you get too much of it. And so I'm a big proponent of moderation within all things. Now you're saying, I think that your story though is still super interesting about the stresses of the military life, that people don't really know about. With whatever you're feeling comfortable sharing, can you talk about why it was so stressful?
Yeah, I had mentioned earlier that very early on in my military career, only a couple days in, I'd say, and it recurred multiple times throughout. That was very noticeable, that I just didn't necessarily fit in.
Yeah, what were those moments?
Maybe, I would say the mindset for sure. The time where it was the most apparent to me, and I had known this beforehand, but where it was more of a slap in the face, and where I could no longer even kind of fit it or fake it anymore, was actually near the end of my career. I was in sergeant's course, which is, just for anybody who's indoctrinated, essentially just, sometimes they'll have you take courses, sometimes it's mandated, to help streamline your understanding of like kind of how a rank works, the skills you have and you can use and stuff like that, help build small unit leadership, stuff like that. But we sat around for a type of powwow with the other, like with our little groups. They broke us up into groups. There's about groups of maybe 5 to 10. And we're all the same rank, and we step into it, and it's kind of like, hey, take your rank off real quick, and we're just gonna have a talk. And it was, and I had a gunnery sergeant in E7, 2 ranks above me. He was our kind of like leader for that, and he seemed like a really cool guy. Interestingly enough, because he was an MMA fighter before, and I even think during his Marine Corps career, he was a really like tough guy. But at the same time, when he sat us down and had this talk, I mean, he had this crazy like gentle, therapeutic, more like therapist side. It was interesting to see the dichotomy there. However, he asked this specific question that was, I would say a multitude of questions, but ranging around the same thought, that someone higher ranked than you, we just use staff sergeant as an example, you're in a firefight, and this staff sergeant is pinned down. He can't go anywhere, and you may be able to help him, may or may not be able to help him. I would say you're going to help him, is what most people answered. Kind of the first question was like, in this situation, like, would you help him, and then why? So, of course, everybody said they'd go and help him. But about at least 75% of the why was, well, he's a staff sergeant, and he's also a Marine. And so that's why I'd go help him. And that felt like a smack to the face. And I thought they were joking, to be honest. And if that's your reasoning, like so be it. But the reason why I thought they were joking was my immediate thought to that was, he's another human being in danger. And if I have the ability to help him, I will. And I thought that, at least when first joining, I thought that was the kind of mindset of everybody. But again, through trial and error and continued time being around these people, it was very evident. I don't want to say these people, because that's not true for everyone, but for at least a good majority of who I should say I was around or served with, that was the thought process.
It sounds like it was like the hardcore tribalism that was,
yes,
versus like the universal.
Unit.
Go ahead.
Yeah, yes. No, just like you're saying. Sorry, I just wanted to agree with you.
No, don't agree with me. Don't interrupt me. So that once a Marine, always a Marine. What is it that you guys say? Or what was it that the Marines said? Is that your...
Hoorah.
Hoorah.
Yeah, that one.
Right.
Yeah.
When I was at the VA last year, which was working in an outpatient mental health setting, there was one, it was the Marines who were the most vocal about their service and the most, demonstrative of their service. Like there are veterans who, even though they served for a short amount of time, really identify with their time of service, no matter how old or how long it's been since they've served. And it becomes their identity, even if they're 70 years old and they only serve for 18 months at 18 years old. And, they'll dress in order to reflect that and communicate to the world that that's kind of who they are. And those exist across all branches. But it was, just like you said, to be judicious. In the clinic that I was working at specifically, I saw more Marines who fit into that mold than any other branch. Yeah.
Yes.
And you're saying that basically they teach that, pretty much.
Yes. I mean, it's really just as much as I haven't been to the other boot camps, and had, I have had contact with plenty of other veterans, and then during the service, the other branches. In the Marine Corps, this is the way I put it. And I think the rest of the world sees it a little askew. I wouldn't say the rest of the world, but, most people, they say the Marines are the best. And a lot of the times, the Marines are the best. But a lot of the times, the Marines are the best at things that it doesn't matter to be competing about. It makes no sense to be competing about. It's a waste of energy, and it just gives people a big head.
Like what?
Uh-huh.
Like I can drink the most beers. I'm the best at crushing beer.
Yes. So there's that. I mean, just down to the smallest things, but it makes things more stressful than it does, which just incorporates into the identity of that.
Yeah, be the best all the time, no matter what. Every situation is a no-fail situation, and unless we're absolutely perfect, number one, then you should just go kill yourself, kind of thing.
Yes.
Like very toxic.
Imagine the stress of that all the time. We do that. I think we do that enough to ourselves as a species that we try and be perfect and we try and be the best. But then or I should say as a person, we all want, a lot of the times we want the best, or sometimes we have our perfectionist things. But as the organization you work for, to demand that all the time, it just like you said, very toxic. And it harms people. I mean, it's in the numbers. With veteran suicides and such things like that. And I just did not ascribe to the majority of their thinkings. And I wish I had known that sooner. However, in the same dichotomy of how weightlifting, like I needed it for a period of time. I'm so glad I went through it, even if it exacerbated certain things, because I overdid it. I learned a lot of good life skills and a lot of the hard truths that a lot of people may just learn elsewhere or earlier in life, or maybe they haven't. But that's where I learned it.
All right, so now let's keep advancing the story. So you get through your 5 years of service, which, by the way, that's 5 years of service, which is that's more than just your initial contract. You signed up for an extension.
Oh, actually, in this certain circumstance, it was my initial contract. Let's say I signed up for an extension. Yeah, they got me with that one. I thought I was going to be the 20-year guy.
Yeah, right.
So I said, yeah, it doesn't matter how long the contract is because I'm going to do 20.
Yep.
25, whatever, So it was actually the certain MOS, it was security forces, the Marine security guards that guard the embassies. And then if you're prestigious enough, they're the ones who guard the Marine security guards that guard the president.
I can see why that's so appealing.
Right? Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you did your 5 years, and the gym was sort of what got you through it. But at the same time, it was developing a negative reaction that was going to come later on. So let's go from there. So you get out, and then what?
So it was actually at the very end that I was told by one of my bosses. He was a decent guy. He was actually he had a degree in theology. He's an interesting character. But he told me that I was wasting my last year because I knew that I was getting out anyway. Why not get a step ahead? So I did some. I didn't think he would allow, as my boss, that they would allow me. But I did some online courses. And some in-person courses actually that I definitely worked for. And then and I knew that I wanted to be a nurse. At that point, I had a better understanding of the world, I think. And my first thought when joining the military was I want to do something very different than my parents, and they're both in the medical field. And so, and then ironically again, I find out that that's exactly what I want to do. So I get out. Have already been accepted to UTSA, do my 2 years of prerequisites, This is where I first find trouble really getting into the gym. Is during this time frame with a full-time load of school, I had just had my son. My son was born in my last year in the Marine Corps. So that those first couple of years, just obviously a lot of work. So I didn't have as much time for the gym, and I started noticing that I think the phrase we used back then was I was losing my gains.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I had a lot. I honestly had a lot of problems with that mentally. It was a tough time in that instance. I was doing really well in school. My son was doing okay, so it didn't matter that much. But I did have a little bit of a tough time with that, trying to find time for the gym and not being able to. Losing that physique that I had had for so long, since pretty much the middle to near the end of high school up until this point. And that was kind of how I identified myself, to be really honest, was I went to the gym a lot and I looked really good with my shirt off, which sounds silly.
No, man, not at all. I think that there's plenty of men, especially people who are more fitness oriented, who completely understand and maybe even share that mindset.
Um, but again, it was good for me. I didn't know at the time, but it was good for me. So I would say that kind of continued on, and then and so how the injuries kind of fit in here is they were what the majority of them are is the Marine Corps. Like that's what caused the injuries. It was just kind of some. I'd say somewhat. It could have been, or was somewhat exacerbated by the over exercising.
So you're saying that you experienced just body injuries while in your time of service, and then because you were over exercising, those like the damage that was sustained were then just increased because the lack of ability to really rest and recover, and then continued stress just made it worse that maybe otherwise would have gone away on its own, or do you think it just would have been not as severe?
Hard to tell.
Yeah, it's true.
But I would say from there that because I again just as I guess as my studies increase, however you want to say it, as my workloads increase in classes, and then I went through a divorce, which was definitely for the best. Noticeably for the best. I know it still happens nowadays, but I hope that we're moving away from it as a society, saying like, hey, we should just stay together for our kid or for our kids or whatever it may be. It'll be better for them because we both knew that if we stayed together, all we would do is continue fighting. So going through a divorce around that time frame, and being a single dad, that ate most of my time, and then going into nursing school shortly after that, which was very time consuming, but rewarding. Really solidified that that's exactly what I wanted to do, and I loved it. Did well in school and all that good stuff. That same kind of thing. Not a lot of time for the gym, and that kind of always had me on edge. White knuckling it is the term I like to use.
Sounds similar to your time in the Marines, almost, but for different,
yes.
but for a better reason.
Yes, exactly. So I was kind of forced out of the gym, and realizing that not only the injury standpoint, because I know I've been harping on that a lot, despite the fact that it, sure, those would have probably been more short-term injuries. If anything, too bad at all, if it weren't for the Marine Corps in the first place, type of thing. But also in the fact of like how time consuming it was. Spending, 2.5, 3 hours in the gym every day, adding in an extra shower, plus, making sure meals are at specific times and things like that, really ate up so much of my day. And now realizing that I have so much more time in the day, um, depending on, how my schedule looked, without making the gym my main focus and kind of centering or moving things around in my day just for the gym. Um, which was using that word, how I did it, again, toxic at the time. You can definitely make it, anyone can make it work for their schedule where it's not toxic, but me personally, how I did it was toxic. So being forced out of it was kind of good for me because maybe I wouldn't have noticed otherwise. Um, and then so a long time out of the gym, every once in a while I try and go back in and see how much I lost, which was, one of those with some of those humbling moments.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, just different life things that ate up time. Until I looked kind of for a different avenue of exercise. And to be honest, I had always wanted to do martial arts. I did it when I was a kid. I think I like doing practical things that are practical. And so I figured, well, if I get into martial arts and I work hard enough, it'll be both exercise and, learn a way to defend myself other than the small bits of it I learned while I served.
I wanted to ask about the things that you were just kind of going through in this story of yours. I have to push back against what you said about how you were forced out of the gym, because the way that you just said it, man, sounds like actually your experience of becoming a father and your desire to become a nurse and the value of being a good student was higher and more valuable to you than the gains in the body and the physique. Because I mean, honestly, man, if you very much wanted to, you could have been some deadbeat dad or a dropout school just in order to keep those 6 hours of work every day. If you do think about the gym and everything, like I want to just like compliment you on that. I'm like, bravo to you for seeing the higher purpose of fatherhood and being a provider over just the vanity side of things.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I always, I shouldn't say hope I made the right decision. I knew I made the right decision. That's one of the things that, again, surprising. I'm glad I learned in the Marine Corps is really putting priorities in and having a good perspective and things like that. I guess you're right. I could have made different decisions and made my choices there. But I think with how I grew up and what I learned and stuff like that, that hmm, yeah, I think this. Hard to, weird to say it like that, but I think it was the only choice I think conscientiously I could make, and I wanted to make, honestly, if that makes any sense.
Definitely. If you ever want a good measuring stick of like your core values, then if you reflect on a event and you say what you just said, which was I had no other choice, then it's clear that there's some super deep instilled value within who you are that made it seem as if there was no other option available. Like the firefighter says, there is no other choice. I do run into that house because that's what you do. You look at the staff sergeant who is under fire and you said to yourself, I'm going to help him because he's a human being. Like that's kind of who you are. Um, and like I've got similar things too, where I say, well, no shit, I'm obviously going to do that. There is no other choice. That's the value side of things. What value would you say is the undercurrent for that decision when you reprioritize things?
Hmm. Like you feel that you only have one choice, what core value?
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
When you made the choice to prioritize being a dad and also your education and work, what value was motivating that?
Maybe whether it be, I'm trying to think back to, it's funny enough, my Marine Corps core values, right?
Uh,
Um, man. I mean, it could fit under, so we do the honor, courage, commitment thing, and it could really fit under all three. But there's, integrity there too, right? Uh, doing the right thing even when no one's watching, I guess. Um, I don't know. How would you classify? I'm not sure
oh,
I could,
well,
I
I
could
mean,
classify.
there's not a wrong answer here. Like you said, it could be integrity, where the right thing is to be a good dad and to complete what you set out to do, whether or not it's easy or difficult. It could be service, where your role of being a provider and serving your daughter and through your education is that. It could be loyalty through exactly what it sounds like, being loyal to your commitments. It could be excellence, where you want to be excellent in those things. Like, there's not a wrong choice. It's just
Gotcha.
whatever speaks to you.
I would like, personally, I would say it's probably either like commitment or courage. Courage to do the right thing, to choose to do the right thing, even when there are other options. Commitment to the responsibilities like I've I've made, or the the choices I made, I guess.
Yeah, that's great. There you go. And there's no one who could argue against you on those things, because when it comes to core values or being making our decisions based on our values, it's really hard to do. It's impossible to do the wrong thing or have the wrong idea, because it's entirely a subjective understanding. Because you can have different values but still make the same choices. So with that, I also wanted to just contribute to that experience of losing your gains, and that that place in which, when we cross the line or enter into the gray zone of when physical fitness, when the physique goes from being like a healthy contributing part of life to, and like an unhealthy addiction, uh, to use like some coarse, like stronger language, or even just like the classic term of, like I said earlier, the term of vanity. When that experience of looking in the mirror and feeling satisfied, like, then defines my self-worth. And so, like, if I don't feel satisfied when I look in the mirror, then my self-worth goes down. And if I do feel satisfied in the mirror, my self-worth goes up, which is like, classic characteristics of body dysphoria or body dysmorphia. I look
Yeah.
at I look at myself and I hate myself because of how I look, and it's like, oh, um, I've experienced that myself. With being with fitness and stuff. I come from a family where not everyone is physically fit, and being raised around that, of like wanting so hard to not be associated with that, like type 2 diabetes is just like everyone in my family's got type 2. It's just like you're just born with it. Um, and so I like worked so hard to like not want to be there, but then like I still have the ingrained personality and genetics that just predestined me for it. And so I've been on this journey myself, Josh, of coming to love myself as myself and detach my self-worth from how fit I am. But at the same time, walking that hard line of like, but it's still good to be physically fit. It's still good to be physically active. So how do I keep myself from going across the extreme? So when you're talking about your story of trying to find an alternative that is sustainable, that will not produce the toxicity that you experience firsthand, I'm right there with you, man. I've been doing a Peloton because I can't lift weights and I can't go to the gym because of my becoming of a father. And moving to a new place totally disrupts everything too. So it's been a struggle of trying to love myself because I can't exercise as much as I want to, and also not just give in and give up on maintaining healthiness. So with all that, I just want to say that I relate with what your story, man. You're not alone, and I really appreciate it. And I'm sure there's other people who would listen to this who could experience a similar level of wondering if too much is too much. So now we make the turn.
Yes, and that is really nice to hear, the whole walking the line, kind of like you said, because maybe I haven't found the exact right spot yet. Because like you said, I made the turn, and I'll say this turn will be just just kind of hit the 3 year mark. I think um, because it was about the exact time. It was the exact time that I started nursing. Basically, I wanted to make a lot of, I guess, life changes at once. I had finished nursing school. Um, After getting out of the Marine Corps, because all I was doing was I wanted to focus on school, so I didn't get a job, and I just wanted to do full-time school using the GI Bill. So I was still getting okay money, but I didn't want to throw that money at rent or at a home or anything like that. I wanted to save it, so I got out and lived with my parents. I went back to living with my parents. Went through the whole divorce spiel, like I mentioned earlier. Um, but was still living with my parents until I finished nursing school and decided I'd go be on my own again. Again, wanted a couple of life changes to move forward. So at the same time, I got my first nursing job at Methodist Hospital in their PICU. I been doing some research on like to do very low impact exercises because of my injuries from the Marine Corps, and I didn't want to exacerbate those. And it was just, I was finding whenever I went to the gym, I talked about this as far as times I went to the gym, it was not only the, the losing of the games that made it difficult, but it really was that, like, it was painful. The injuries I sustained, everything was difficult to do. It was painful. I think I was just, I would be making things worse. So I researched some low impact exercises. Yoga was a possibility, something like that, but I kind of steered away from that a bit. Didn't want to do the mainstream thing. And found Tai Chi. It's a martial art, very low impact. And didn't do a crazy ton of research into it, but decided to find a place close to me. Got in contact, or I should say, I messaged like the overall company and the instructor of the school I still go to now to this day, 3 years later. Got in contact with me and was like, "Hey, just drop on by, come take a peek, come do a free lesson. We'll just chat, whatever it may be." And I went over there and, honestly, fell in love with it the first time. I've got a great instructor who's a very down-to-earth, chill guy that, doesn't demand things from people. It's very different than most of the physically fit scene, which was nice to be around.
It's like the exact opposite of what you experienced in the Marine Corps.
Exactly. But what's funny is he did time in the military, and he's actually a very he's kind of done a good amount with his life in different areas, so he has a lot of experiences to draw on. And it was really great because I've honestly had this constant theme, and again, it's almost like I'm going back against what I said earlier. As much as I didn't care for my time in the military, it has given me a lot in life. And a brotherhood in a different way than I thought. I was screamed at since day one that the Marine Corps was my brotherhood, and we'd just be brothers for life. But I didn't actually leave there with a lot of like close friends or people I reach back out to, which is the experience of most Marines. Is they have friends for life from the Marine Corps, and they're brothers and all this other stuff. But for me, actually, it's people from other branches and just the random people I meet and the things I do in school and nursing school. A lot of my instructors in nursing school were veterans, and I felt very comfortable there because of that. Same thing with, so then I go here, and he was prior military. And so the first day he goes in, and we start doing it, and he's like, listen, you look super tense, like all the time. And I was like, yeah, I pretty much white knuckle it all the time. And I don't know how not to. And he says, so I'm not going to tell you to relax because you've been told to relax. You've either been told to relax all your life or you've been told to stand at attention and, very rigid, firm. And telling you to relax isn't going to work. So, and I'm actually blanking on the verbiage he used. But basically he said, just find out what's comfortable. Like basically like listen to your body, find out what's comfortable and do that. Whatever forms we're doing, I don't want you to mimic how I do it. I want you to find what's comfortable for you, which I'd never been told before and had never thought to do. I just thought I should, do things like everybody else, reach for the top, work as hard as I can, whatever it may be. But, and now I've kind of applied that to a lot of things in life, do what's comfortable. And now kind of reaching back to what you said about the middle of the road, I know that, and I have gone a couple of times, that I could go back to the gym if I wanted to, and do what's comfortable and what's appropriate for my body versus just pushing as hard as I can.
Gosh, I just think incredible life advice in general, to stay within your comfort zone, but not to the point in which it's like a soft padded life, but from a safety perspective to make sure that what you're doing is sustainable and you can reap the most benefits from it while you exist within this. I mean, you say comfort, but it doesn't sound like it's just like a laziness sort of thing, like, oh, I'm not going to do anything. Like, you're still engaged, but how would you like describe or define comfort in how you mean it?
Yeah, so with comfort, just basically, just I think using the word sustain, that you're able to continue to do that where you're not being like kind of a harm to yourself, where you're able to continue to do it on a regular basis. So I'm still able to push myself physically because whereas you start out and in general Tai Chi is as it's kind of described in shows, movies and stuff, it's very slow moving, but a lot of what people don't see is actually the effort put forth behind it. A mantra he likes to use that he'll say all the time is in Tai Chi, everything moves, your entire body moves, and you're focusing on all different parts of your body at once, or nothing moves. Everything moves or nothing moves. And it's a different kind of workout that you'll do all this slow movements, and you'll leave some of the first couple days like, wow, I'm sore. Like, why am I sore? It didn't seem like I did that much. So I found it as a very just different kind of exercise, a different kind of workout.
Yeah, to me, tell me if you agree with this. Feeling sore can be the most like rewarding feeling because it says, okay, the work that I put in actually is producing results.
Oh yeah, you couldn't have said that better. I lived for being sore for a long time. I wouldn't be satisfied, along with the gains and stuff, unless I was incredibly sore afterwards, for even a couple days afterwards.
Gotcha. So you got hooked on that sore feeling.
And that high, yeah, on all the highs of like lifting. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so this wisdom that you were given where the guy said like stay comfortable, in other words, was basically saying it's okay that you don't just completely wreck your body and get super sore afterwards.
Yes.
Yeah, man.
Definitely.
That's that comfort for sure.
And the comfort too, part of it was not only that, but just so I'm not white knuckling it all the time, because that's something I just couldn't fathom. It was just always there. So like a stress thing too, and this being a physical exercise that, again, it was a stress reliever, like I had said earlier when I was in the gym, but in this mindset, it didn't kind of cause another stress, kind of like you said, chasing a high all of the time, the gym high, which is another stressor in and of itself. So now I no longer had that.
Man, and you've been sober in a way since then. It's almost
Yes.
it really is amazing how it parallels an addiction in a way that you've been able to overcome and sustain.
I will say I'm, yeah, something like 3 years sober, exactly like you said, which feels silly when I say it, but when you say it or somebody else says it, it's like, okay, yeah, I can connect that.
Mm-hmm. Well, the experience of getting attached to an action, a person, a thing, like that a word addiction, I think is, I mean, it's supercharged, and I believe personally that we all have our own form of negative relationships or toxic relationships with things, which in it of itself is like the basics of an addiction. So we don't have to use that language. You could say that, you were able to break up with your toxic relationship, and you've been better for it ever since.
Yes, yes.
Does that feel more comfortable?
Well, like I had said, when someone else says it and like I'm able to coalesce it, okay, it actually makes sense to somebody. Then whatever terminology feels comfortable. I see what you're saying in either aspect. Yeah,
it's true. In the end, it's all just words. It's just words. Well, I can say from my experience of you, Josh, and this is what I said from the very beginning. When we met, it was something that I was like, oh, wow, I want to hear more of this guy's story. And I think that his story could inspire or at least relate to others who knows, like, what if, like, you, Josh, 18-year-old Josh, heard where you are now, you talking about, like, hey, I was on this path and this is where it led. If it could have opened your eyes sooner, or maybe planted a seed sooner to make the changes before. Like, that's sort of part of the whole reason why I wanted to get you on here. And I can testify to saying, because I know you personally, offside of this episode, that I'll say that what you say is true. How I experience you, is someone who is not white knuckling all the time, and who has a very positive energy around him that appears to be stress free and managing life well. And with that is something that I admire about you. So, with all that say, man, your hard work has paid off, and it's cool to know you from this side of their story, because the growth that you've experienced is incredible based off of what you've said of where you've come from. Congratulations.
Thank you. That means a lot. I'm glad I was able to watch your I think it was session 0 episode, your 0 episode, so I could get to know your background a little bit too.
Oh man, right. Talk about growth and stuff, right? That was 18 episodes ago. Yeah, it's come a long way, and I think that's a good way to kind of close this off, is looking back and thinking about the growth that can experience over the longer course of time versus just the short periods of a day. So, if there was anything, Josh, that you'd like to close things off with, what would you say to your original Marine self, to offer some encouragement?
Honestly, I think this is it's weird. I've thought about this a couple times, but besides maybe some minor changes, I'd probably look back and say, just keep on, like, part of the course, keep doing what you're doing, because I've mentioned it a couple times. Despite the fact that you know, those were not the things that I needed for all of life, I should say. I needed them at the time, and they were lessons that I needed to learn. And I think I learned some of them the hard way, and I think that's, as a person, that's exactly what I needed. You know, we all have our different ways of learning and what we need for learning. I learned very early on that I'm not one of the people that learns well just by being yelled at, which is what the Marine Corps is good for. It's good. It's good for a lot of people who need to be yelled at to learn something. So that's something I learned really early on, and that's another reason I wasn't good for it. But, however, despite that, in other aspects, I learned so much from the path I took. So, and I don't think I'd be where I am today, or be as um, just where I am today, or doing what I'm doing, or enjoying life. Because I feel, at least in my world, that I'm, at least from my purview, that I'm succeeding in life, and you know, accomplishing the goals that I want to or need. Um, and I think that the path I chose was the right one.
Indeed, it was, my friend. Indeed, it was. Well, thanks so much for being on my podcast, and for all those who have stuck through it with us. Tune in next week for another great episode of the Grow South Spiritual Fitness Podcast. Bye.
Thanks, sir.
And